What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Chicken Scratch Gospel. I am your host, Matt, along with me, my co-host, Daniel. What's going on, man? How you doing today?
What's going on? How's it going today, man?
I'm living the dream, man. You know how it is. You know how it is. It's really been nice out. I don't know, man. My kids are behaving themselves. Yeah. They're Zoom classing at home still, and it's just life is good, bro. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Actually, the weather has been really nice lately. It's been like cold, but it hasn't been like too cold.
Yeah.
And the sun's been out, and so I'm loving it. I know the rain's gonna come soon, and that means when rain comes, snow comes, and so we're excited to go out to the snow. Yeah.
Well, you have all of the fun out at the snow.
Well, we just recently went, but it wasn't snow; it was ice.
It was ice.
So we were sledding on ice, man.
I saw some of the videos of that, and yeah, it was people slipping and sliding around everywhere, and I'm glad that everybody is, home and safe and well, because it looked like some people took some L's that day.
Yeah. Nobody went to the hospital, so it was a win for all of us.
That's always a win if you can go to the snow and nobody goes to the hospital, or go to the ice rather. Yeah. Today is a really, really cool episode of Chicken Scratch Gospel, because we're going to be talking about some of David's mighty men, and really David, but one of the things that his mighty men did. And so if you've never read about that, you can look in 2 Samuel and kind of read the accounts of, as David, as he's on the run and he's got this army with him and he's got this crew, man, of mighty men. And one of my favorite stories in the entire Bible is a dude who goes by Adino, but also Joash Beth-Shebeth, which, why not just call him Adino? If he went by Adino as well, let's just call him that one. That one's way easier than Joash Beth-Shebeth. But, and how he raised his spear against hundreds of men and he slew them all. It's such a cool story. But I want to go to 2 Samuel, chapter 23, verses 14 and 16. And we're also going to go to 16, 17 later. But right now, let's go to 14 through 16. It says that David was staying in the stronghold at the time, and a Philistine detachment had occupied the town of Bethlehem. So they're in a stronghold just outside of the town of Bethlehem. And David just makes this passing remark it says, David remarked longingly to his man, "Oh, how I would love some of that good water from the well by the gate in Bethlehem." So, after he said this just remark, the three, it says, which were the three captains of David's crew, broke through the Philistine lines, drew some water from the well by the gate in Bethlehem, and brought it back to David. First of all, if your crew is simply known as the three, then your squad is fierce. Like you roll deep with those three. Is something hardcore happening there? Because it's been said like that the pen is mightier than the sword, unless one of these three is holding the sword, and then it's not going to be okay. The sword is mightier in that moment, right? But this is just a crazy story. The bravery, the ferocity. What stands out to me the most, though, in this story is the loyalty, the trust, the honor. These are the things that stand out the most, and we talk and we bring up at times Maxwell on this podcast, because he's just an amazing leadership teacher, and so I have a recommendation today that we'll do before the end of the podcast. That's actually Maxwell, but John Maxwell equates this idea of loyalty as the law of the inner circle. And that's in his book, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. That's law number 11, the law of the inner circle. And I really dig it, because an inner circle isn't formed just because you want one. Like, you know what I mean? I need a crew. I really want one. And so it just formed. No, it's formed over time by building loyalty and trust. You can't, I think that there are things that people demand from other people at times. And I think that what we all need to understand is that loyalty and trust aren't gathered from a job description or a promotion or a title or any other kind of on-demand way, right? But like real loyalty, real trust are earned through loyalty and trust invested. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was writing down right now that I feel like we do have a jaded, view of loyalty. And some people do think, oh, just because I'm under somebody, I have to be loyal. Like as if it's like an obligation. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And I think I believe loyalty comes from true relationship with somebody. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure here in this story, David spent time with these men.
Right.
They knew David's heart. He knew their hearts. They spent a lot of time with each other where they did build that trust, but it was birthed out of this relationship that they developed with one another.
Yeah.
And I think that's where loyalty comes. It comes out of this desire. Hey, I know you, and I know what you're about. I know what you stand for. These guys knew that David stood for all that God had promised and all that God has spoken and called them to do. And they saw his heart too, and they said, "Hey, this is our guy, man. We'll do anything for him."
Yeah.
But it came out of this relationship, this bond, and
yeah, man.
And for us, as leaders, the more time we spend with each other, and we're developing this relationship, and that's where loyalty is birthed from,
Yeah, and these mighty men, they went the extra mile for David because for years, for battles, for wars, like David had gone the extra mile for them.
Yeah.
David wasn't just sending dudes out. Now, David's very famous for, spending time later on. We can read about David's greatest, sins as he, when kings were supposed to go off to war, he stayed behind and he wasn't where he was supposed to be. And because he wasn't where he was supposed to be, he made some choices he was not supposed to make. But during this time, he is right next to his men in battle. He's fighting wars. He's winning wars. God's giving him victory after victory after victory. And these dudes see him shoulder to shoulder with them and going the extra mile for them. David was their model for trust and for loyalty and for honor. He honored them and he loved them and he served them. And so they wanted to reciprocate that. They wanted to then do the same for him. And for me, it kind of goes back to the truth that I'm sure a lot of people have heard, and that's this, that you can teach what you know, but you reproduce who you are. Right. And it doesn't matter how much of the Bible that you know. It doesn't matter how much, stuff that you read that you can remember and you can adhere to and you can then go and share and teach. It doesn't really, none of that stuff matters if who you are is not being changed by what it is that you know. You know what I mean? If anybody can just know stuff. My kids got spelling words they got to know. Is it changing the way that they speak? You know what I mean? Yeah. More often than not, it's not. But I mean, that's a very poor example of what it's like to know something and not necessarily allow it to change you. People know of God, but they don't allow God to change their heart. Yeah. And so this idea of teaching what you know, but you reproduce who you are. And clearly David had reproduced in these men. God had drawn these men to him because it's who he was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that, man. I love, and you got to walk it out, man. That's what it comes down to. Like, you can't just talk the talk. You got to walk the walk. You got to walk it with people. And I think of my own kids, like, when you give hints to your kids of what you want, I don't know if you've ever done that.
I have.
And sometimes they'll get up, sometimes they won't. And so
correct. And
then that's where I'm like, nah, you better go do it. Okay.
Right.
But I think of my own kids when they ultimately do, they'll get up and when I'm giving them the hints and stuff. But because it's family. That's what family is. And I think even in marriage, like I'll give hints to my wife and she'll be like, do you want that? I'll get it for you right now, But it's just something that happens when you're that closely connected to each other, and it is it draws from relationship, draws from that bond that you have with one another.
Yeah, man, it's so crazy. And the craziest thing though that happens to me in this story is like, so you have David makes this just a passing remark. Again, it wasn't a command. He wasn't given a command for these guys to go do this. He makes this passing remark, and so they go do it for him. They risk their lives to get this dude a cup of water, and then they come back. And they bring it to him, and they give it to him. And then you look at 2 Samuel chapter 23, and we continue in verse 16 and in 17. And it says, but David refused to drink it. Mm-hmm. Instead, he poured it out as an offering to the Lord. And he says, "The Lord forbid that I should drink this," he exclaimed. "This water is as precious as the blood of these men who risked their lives to bring it to me." And so David did not drink it. He poured it out as a drink offering to him. Now, pause. I would be so upset. Do you know what we just went through to get you that cup of water? I thought you said nothing would be better than getting this cup of water. We would have brought you the cup of water. We almost died, and you just dumped it out for everybody. But I think the only reason why I'd be this upset, and I'm looking at it from that way, is because I'm not from that era. I'm not from that culture. And the truth is, David honors his men by offering this water that they drew to God as a drink offering to God. And like, that's the kind of leader that you want to follow right there. Like, that's the dude right there that you want to follow. Like, no wonder David had such a strong connection and a strong bond with his men. In fact, you know, when David was being hunted by Saul, even some of his men were like, "Look, man, we'll just go take care of him." Like, you don't even have to do anything, man. We'll go take care of him. And David's like, "No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that." But like the trust and the loyalty that he had with these men, in the midst of all of that, though, we look at this. We look at this king who honors his men by prioritizing God. And that's what he did. I mean, David exemplified this truth for his men, that David's loyalty, his trust, his honor, they all belonged to God first.
I love this scripture, man, because it's kind of a foreshadowing of Christ. If you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because David was a man after God's heart. He loved people, man. He led with such courage and truth, and he was amazing. And for him to do this right here showed how much he loved his men.
Yeah.
And I think and the men actually did something, you know, for him. They wanted to go out of their way. They risked their lives for him. And you think about Jesus and the disciples, you know, and you even think about the disciples that didn't go out of their way for Jesus.
Right.
But what does Jesus do, man? He blesses them, you know. He sacrifices himself for them. And you think, and Jesus was kind of like the model of just this true, authentic, what loyalty even is, you know. And he takes it a step further and does that for them. And so I see that in this verse right here.
Yeah, and I mean, and Jesus even said the words, "Greater love has no man than that he would lay down his life for his friends." And David modeled what it meant to be loyal to God, to trust God, to honor God. And I think that it's so important that we, yes, as leaders, but we as Christians, as believers, we need to build meaningful relationships fostered by trust and honor and loyalty, yes. But these things only come when we prioritize God first in all these other areas. You know, we've got to put God's kingdom, seek my kingdom first. I'll add all these other things to you. And I think people want trust from people. They want to be trusted. People want people's loyalty. People want to feel not necessarily revered, but honored. Sure, they want to feel these things from people. But the issue is that those things don't just happen. You don't go put a quarter in a machine as you're leaving the grocery store and turn and expect to get something. That's not the way that loyalty and trust and honor work. That's not how this goes. And the fact of the matter is, it doesn't come from doing everything right, like making all the right choices. It doesn't come from those things. I've said this multiple times, that a lot of people that, you know, that serve alongside me to this day have told me as much. Like, Matt, we're not with you because you always make the right choice. We're even with you because when we've seen you make a mistake, you've turned around and you've confessed you made that mistake and you apologized to us and we move forward. That's not. And that's not a humble brag. That's proof that any leader can make a mistake and still be a leader. You know what I mean? So if any leaders are out there listening and you're so terrified of people finding out that you've made a mistake or make mistakes, please live your mistakes out loud. You don't wake up in the morning looking to make mistakes, but when they happen, teach about them. Use them as a moment to teach about. Be transparent on the pulpit and preach about the mistake and say, this is what I did. This is what I've experienced. This is what I've been through. Because you will be surprised at the idea that people actually want to have a relationship with a human being and not somebody that they feel they have to put on a pedestal. They want somebody that will stand shoulder to shoulder with them in this battle called life. Yeah. And that, when you fight battles alongside people like that, that's when you build the trust, that David had with his men. And anybody that knows me knows that first and foremost, first of all, they know how much I love my wife. They know how much I love my kids. They know how much I love relationships. I'm a very relational dude. I love relationships. I want to hang out. Our house is the unlocked front door. Come hang out with us, sit in the living room, and let's talk. My fridge is your fridge. My pantry is we're those people. Yeah. But everybody that I am also in relationship with in any way, shape, or form, including my kids, my wife, and my friends, they know that my heart, my loyalty, my trust, my honor, all that belongs to God first. It has to belong to God first. Yeah. Otherwise, you're not gonna be giving the best version of yourself to others. You can't.
Yeah, I love this, man. I think we can unpack this a little because you talked about how David, they went out and they got this drink for David, this water for David. They brought it back. He didn't drink it. Instead, he offered it to God. Like you said, you would have got upset. You don't. I'd
have been upset.
You don't know the culture.
I tell people all the time, I don't know that I'm that saved. Don't slap me across my face and expect me to turn the other cheek. I don't know if I'm there yet.
Yeah. But I love this because it shows us that loyalty should not be hinged on what you do. You know what I mean? Like David showed, like the loyalty wasn't hinged on what I could get from you or what you can do for me. Okay, then that's true loyalty. Right. That wasn't what it was about. The loyalty was, our friendship. Loyalty was hinged on our relationship with one another, and what we're doing together, for the kingdom. And here in this scripture, obviously, when David gave that offering, that was what was most important to him. And I'm sure to these men too, when he did that blessed them as well. And so for us, our loyalty, and I love that. I love this is what we get to do because I don't see my loyalty hinged on, okay, this is what I'm doing. I have to be loyal to this thing that I do. Right. I'm loyal to people because I love them, and as life progresses and we move forward in the different seasons of our lives, my friendships are what I value, right. And I want to be able to come back and say, hey man, like, let's talk, let's have coffee. Because we're friends, we're loyal to each other relationally. And it wasn't just, oh, you did that for me. You were here and now you're not. And you did something else. And no, man, like we're still friends, we're still loyal to each other because we love each other. Right. And that's what brings us together.
Yeah. And I think that what's interesting too is that, these men had an idea of what David would do with what they brought. And David did something different. Mm-hmm. And the men stuck around, right? The men were still with him. The men still fought beside him and all of those things. It's great captains. And I love what you were saying, that it's not what, loyalty isn't necessarily what I can get from you, or it's not built because of what I'm taking what I can get from you or whatever. But really, it is this idea that even if I disagree with you, that does not mean that my love changes. Right. And I think that we can disagree and still honor. Right. We can disagree and we can still have trust for one another. We can disagree and we can still be loyal to one another because the relationship is there. Yeah. And David is just proving in this moment that in the kingdom of God, people are not commodities. The kingdom of God does not operate under the law of supply and demand because God's supply is infinite and the demand is minimal. Mm-hmm. At best, when you consider all of the people that don't know who God is yet, the demand is minimal. Right. but the supply is infinite. And so God is not looking at people and going, look at all these commodities. People are not commodities. People are people.
Right.
And so it's not about what the person can do for you. It's how you can serve and how you can love the person. That's what was so backwards and different about Jesus, because Jesus was not out for what you could do. What can you give me? What can you make happen for me? Jesus was out finding people that were the forgotten ones, that weren't thought about. And he was like, man, I want to just, let's do life together. Did their lives change? Yes. Did he make asks of them? Yes. Were his people loyal? Well, Judas made a poor decision. We know that. He'll forever be known as that. People that are not in the church, they'll quote two famous traitors, right? Benedict Arnold and Judas. Those are the two famous traitors. If you do something that's traitorish to me, I'm going to call you a Benedict Arnold, or I'm going to call you Judas. But every single other disciple of Jesus that was there, that was walking with him, that was living that life with him, every single one was martyred. Every single one died for him, except John. Now, John, we know, was exiled to the island of Patmos. He later became, instead of John the Beloved, he became John the Revelator, wrote the book of Revelation. God gave him all this crazy insight and visions and stuff, which was so cool. But everybody, don't forget that John had his troubles too. Yeah. That fool was tortured. He was beat. He went through it too. And that kind of loyalty, that kind of trust, that kind of honor that these men had for Jesus was because Jesus was not about what he could take from them. It was about what he could give to them. And that's the God that we serve. For God so loved the world that he gave. The creator of the universe gave. He didn't take. He gave. And so Jesus preached about this backwards thing that humanity could not understand. What do you mean it's not about what I can get from a person? Because, in this culture, what I'm doing, I'm bartering, I'm trading, I'm trying to get the most that I can get with what I got, and trying to take the most that I can from people without giving up the least and stuff. And that's very confusing, because Jesus said, no. Yeah. Give. And the apostles, the disciples, that's why they all teach later on, given it shall be given to you. Pressed down, shaken together, running over shall men give into your bosom. Why? Because you gave, not because you took, because you gave. Yeah. And so we need to remember that, man. It's what are you giving? What are you giving to people? What are you offering to people? Because we can't expect everyone's best if we're not willing to first invest our best in them. Right. So what are you giving to people, man? If you're out there and you're listening, I want to know what people are doing for you. I want to know, what are you doing for people? How are you loving people like Jesus did? How are you trusting? How are you being loyal? How are you honoring those? And again, I'm not talking about something that can be manufactured or created of your own volition. I'm talking about the choices that you make are going to reproduce who ends up being drawn into your life. Yeah. And if you're looking around and it's empty, think about it. Think about it. If you're looking at your circle and you feel like you can't trust them, think about it. Think about it, because you reproduce who you are. Yeah. That's very true. I think
also too, man, as we read this story and even the story of Jesus, they were always pointing people to the Father.
Yes.
It was always about the Father's business. That was the mission. That was the goal. That was what they were doing. And I think that's important for us to know, man, when we're in relationship with people. Like, what are you pointing people to? What are we doing this for?
Yeah.
I think those are important things to ask, because we have that vision, we have that calling. We're running in this race together, and we're looking at the Father. Our eyes are fixed on Jesus. He's the center of why we do what we do, and that's what brings us together. That's the goal. That's the mission. And I think if we stay mission minded, and we're loyal to the mission of God, and we're loyal to each other, and we love each other well, we're gonna be okay. We're gonna have disagreements. But we know why we're here. We know what we're doing this, and I think that's even like after Christ, resurrected, the disciples, they got it. They're like, okay, we're not going to have these small little arguments anymore. Like, we're mission minded. We know what we're doing. You know?
Yeah.
And that fire lit under them, and they went out and they preached the gospel and they grew the church, and that was their mission, and that's what they did, man. You know?
I love it, man. I love it. And, you know, again, real trust, real loyalty, real honor. They're earned through loyalty, trust, and honor invested. And so Indiana Jones was about fortune and glory. Jesus is about kingdom and gospel, and we need to be about kingdom and gospel, not fortune and glory. Do you have any recommendations for us today?
I do, man. There's a podcast.
Okay.
I can do this. I'm going to recommend our podcast, of course. But there's another podcast that I love, man. I listen to a lot. I know we're talking about some leadership. And so Carey Nieuwhof. Come on.
Yes.
Carey, my boy Carey. If you guys don't know who Carey is, he's a leadership guru, and he actually sits down with a lot of leaders, man. Patrick Lencioni. I've listened to a lot of great content from Carey that is really, and they're not super, super long, but it's just good stuff, good content that will help you in growth and leadership growth. And so Carey Nieuwhof podcast, you can find him on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts, you probably could find him. Great podcast though to grow in leadership. So
absolutely, man. And that dude is a future thinking guy. He you know, he's a guy that was living in the digital age before really anybody else was, especially as it pertains to the church.
Yeah.
I mean, he really was. He got ahead of the game there, and to my understanding, I think really pastors a church that is online exclusively, which is very interesting. But very, very cool. My recommendation also is a leadership recommendation. Let's go. I want to recommend the Maxwell Leadership Bible. Mm-hmm. So John Maxwell, we know I think we did the recommendation. You had the recommendation last week of John Maxwell's. He's got so much good stuff. Honestly, one day I'm just gonna have to just go out and I'm gonna have a bunch of it, but I'm just gonna have to buy the John C. Maxwell Leadership Bundle or something that comes with all of his writings, because he's got so many of them. But this is a leadership Bible, and it's so cool because it draws from the different things that he has written, and he puts his commentary in the midst of the page. And so as you're reading scriptures, you can kind of unpack also the leadership principles found in each of these stories that are in the Bible, which is really, really cool. So make sure that you go and get one of those, man.
Hey, Maxwell be getting fit though, man. You follow him?
He's out there taking walks, man, in the snow and stuff.
He's getting fit. He's like, hey, guys, I just hope you're doing well.
I can't do that because I don't want to pass out on screen, but we need to. We need to be doing that. We need to be getting better. But, man, make sure you go check out the Carey Nieuwhof podcast, also the Maxwell Leadership Bible. For anything else, I want you to also make sure that you follow us on social media. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit the bell for notifications, and go out and try to love somebody like Jesus today. All right, we're out.